Hello, everyone. This is Stacy. Welcome to The Landing.
Today on The Landing, we welcome a true Down East original, a man whose roots run deep in the salt marsh and sound waters. He grew up surrounded by tides, tradition, and the kind of neighbors who feel more like family. Genuine to his core, grateful for every blessing, and full of life in a way that's contagious, he carries with him a deep love for his youth and for the people who shaped him. His story is one of home, heart, and heritage, and I am deeply thankful to know him. I can't wait for you to hear it.
Hello, and welcome to The Landing. I am excited about the conversation I'm about to have with a very dear friend. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us your name and who's your crowd and where you're from so we can get started.
So my name is Michael Martin. I grew up in Atlantic. John and Sue Martin are my parents, my mom and dad. My mom taught at Atlantic Elementary School for probably 28 years. And my dad was a Marine Fisheries officer and served down, he retired eventually. He's since passed away. He passed away in 2020. But so fortunate to grow up in Atlantic and Down East in general. I mean, it has molded me into the person that I am today. There's no doubt about that.
Yes, and I totally get that. When I say that, especially now, I think people who are not familiar with our area, they've got to think that's such a cliche thing to say, but it's the truth.
It absolutely is, and it rings so true when you interact with people who are familiar with that area. Mm-hmm. You and I didn't know each other growing up. Right. I knew your sister because she married my good buddy David Paul.
Yeah.
I knew your mama and daddy, but I didn't know you. But
my cousins.
Right. But when I moved back to Kinston, I mean, it's like we're family. I mean, and I genuinely mean that. And
yep. I was so tickled when I met you here because I felt like I did have an instant friend and family member that I could call you for anything.
Certainly. And that's a commonality that I don't think that people realize. One of the unique things, I was born in Kinston, and we moved down east after the summer of my first grade year of school. Mm-hmm. And I tell people, I'm not from Atlantic. Mm-hmm. Now, I grew up in Atlantic, but right. To be from Atlantic, you had to be born in Atlantic.
Right.
And I'm proud that I wasn't born there, but I'm proud that Down East is what molded me into the person that I am.
Right.
I think that is something that a lot of people who relocate Down East don't recognize, is the value of becoming ingratiated and a part of that community. Mm-hmm. There's so many people that look at Down East and say, well, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
My gracious, it's the best thing in the world to be part of. I mean, I don't, yeah. I'm in the car business now, and I can't tell you the percentage of business that I get from the connections that I made growing up down east.
Wow.
But I think there's a value and a trust that you build by being ingratiated in that community.
Without a doubt. Because you're not just you individual. When people look at you as Down Easters, they look at you, and that's why I ask, who's your crowd, where you're from, because it matters.
One of the first things I remember one of my first jobs was a bag boy at the grocery store in Atlantic, the Red and White. And I was taking a man's groceries out one day, and he said, "Well, who are your people?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, my dad's John Martin. He's a Marine Fisheries officer." And he said, "I was going to give you a tip." He said, "But the best tip I can give you is you shouldn't always tell people who your people are." He was joking, of course, but you know, he made a point. It was such an important thing to be a part of a community, and being down east, you really, not only were you a part of the down east community, but the specific community that you were a part of. And I remember when I worked with the North Carolina Ferry Division for a while, and one of my favorite human beings who ever graced this planet was a lady named Ellen Goodwin. They called her the warden, and she was the operations manager at Cedar Island for the North Carolina Ferry Division. And I loved her, but I had a healthy fear of her as well. But she would always talk about how different communities had a different feel. Mm-hmm. There were, the people who lived in Atlantic said these words differently. The people that lived in Atlantic thought they were better than the people that lived on Cedar Island. Mm-hmm.
Or Davis or Stacy or Marshallburg or Harkers Island.
And what was interesting to me is, like, I really saw that growing up, mm-hmm. Playing sports. I tell folks, I mean, I got the daylights beat out of me by girls playing baseball my whole life. I mean, Della and Allison Stein, Della Brooks, Allison Stein, Anne Marie Gaskell. I mean, they beat us like a drum. And but there was always sort of unwritten hierarchy of how you viewed the other communities that made up down east.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was kind of fascinating. When I was at East Carolina, I did a folklore project on the folklore of growing up down east.
Oh, wow.
And I remember I wish I could remember this man's name. He was from Marshallburg, older fella. And the two things that I remember from that interview was the way he said Jarrett Bay. When I left, he said Jarrett Bay. I was like, what in the world was he saying? My dad explained to me what he was saying. But at the end of the interview, I would say, I'm gonna say the name of a community, and I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Mm-hmm. And I said Harkers Island, and he said, honey, that place don't exist anymore. He said, that's not the place that I remember as a child.
Oh, it's changed so much. And this was in what year?
Oh, gosh, that would have been in 97.
Wow. So he really doesn't exist now.
No, certainly not. Yeah. Not the Harkers Island that I recall.
Yeah. Wow. Sad truth.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit. When you moved to down east, mm-hmm. and you were entering second grade.
Yep.
Was it a culture shock to you? I know you were little, you were small, but were you welcomed into the community, or how was that? Because that's always interesting to hear.
Yeah, we were, especially because my parents made quick friends with Mike and Ann Fulcher, Harry Michael and Miss Ann. They took us in, and our families would spend, the weekends together, and James and Angie and Stephanie were our family. And I mean, I almost get a little choked up talking about it because of how important Mr. Mike was and how influential, that family was on our lives growing up. And, I posted something on social media the other day about doing something for a customer at work and her thanking me, and how it didn't make any sense for her to thank me because it's what you're supposed to do. And I remember thinking, she's an older lady in her 80s, and people in our community always looked out for my mom. Clay Fulcher was our neighbor. Clay, Harry Michael Boyd Fulcher, Stephen Smith, people that if they knew my mom needed something, they were going to make sure that she had it. Mm-hmm. And it's so amazing today when so much of society has lost that. And then I don't know if you've ever seen the video that Baxter Miller did about Kate and Daniels and mullet fishing.
No.
And so Kate and Daniels, who's one of my favorite down east young men today, there's a video about Kate and the mullet fishing, and he talks about, I just like to go catch fish and clean them and take them to older ladies in the community that don't have someone,
wow,
that lost her husband, and
right,
and and Caton is probably 30, in his 30s now, maybe, but to see those generations with that same sort of community thought.
Yes.
And community thought is not something that exists to the same prevalence that it does down east other places.
Right. And what saddens me, Mike, is that down east now there's so many people that are moving in. That community thought isn't what it used to be down east because people don't know each other anymore.
They don't. I mean, my mom goes to Atlantic United Methodist Church, and growing up, attendance at church that's not something that's unique to down east. That church attendance has lightened considerably, but
right.
I knew every single person in that church growing up, and now I go and visit, and there might be 30 or 40 people there, and of those 30 or 40 people, I might only know 10 of them.
Yeah.
And those are people that, have gone to that church since I was in second grade.
Right. Well, just this past weekend, I was home with Mom and Aunt Pert were talking, and Aunt Pert asked Mom, said, how many people do you think you know on Harker's Island now? And Mom said, probably less than a third.
Oh, absolutely.
That's crazy, isn't it?
And it's so interesting when I'm home now to just drive around Atlantic. I would say that when I was 15 or 16 years old, I knew 95% or better of the people that lived on Atlantic.
Yeah, and that's not exaggerating, folks.
No.
That's like for real.
In Atlantic, at that time, was probably a community of 800 people, I would guess. But I remember Matthew Willis, who's actually from Newport, but his parents would always come. They would spend the summer, and we would have the community watch, we call ourselves, and we would ride around in his Grand Wagoneer and patrol the community of Atlantic, and you would know every single person that you passed. And that was that unwritten rule that, when you passed them, you tapped your brake. So silly little things like that.
Yep.
But now if
you'd look in your rearview mirror
to see if they tap theirs.
That's right.
And but now if you do that, you're going to be worried that somebody might, turn around and try to whoop you or something.
Like what's going on?
Yeah.
Well, what are some things that you remember about Atlantic and growing up down east that are no longer, like things that you miss down there? Can you think of anything?
The red and white.
Oh, yes.
Just the community businesses. There was Winston's.
Yes. Now, explain to people what Winston's was, because I'm sure.
So Winston's was a general store. It kind of sat in front of Clayton Fulcher's Fish House on the road there. And Roderick Hill ran it. And Roderick Hill will forever and always be one of my favorite human beings on the planet. And every time you'd ask Roderick how he was doing, every day's a holiday and every meal's a feast, he'd say. And
I love it.
but Mr. Roderick, after school days, we would walk to Winston's, and you would just charge whatever he would write it down in a little book, and it was such a unique place. I mean, it was your quintessential general store. I mean,
you would get
there was
soda, pack of nabs.
Right. And there was, but there was also net dip and, chest waders and about anything under the sun that you could want there. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, but literally every kid would walk to Winston's after school. The idea of being able to walk to school and walk home, I mean, it's such a foreign concept, even in a small town like Kinston. But yeah, Winston's, the red and white. So my first job growing up, I worked for a brief period at the fish house, shoveling ice. And then soon after that, I came of age that I was able to get a work permit and went and interviewed with Jerry Gaskell and Patricia Smith at the Cruise Mart 2. The Cruise Mart 2 was its official name, but it was the red and white, and got my first official sort of job where I paid taxes and whatnot, and went to work bagging groceries there. The Fulcher family, they were so influential in life in those Down East communities at that time, because they owned the red and white, but they also owned the Driftwood, the motel and restaurant at Cedar Island. And at that time, the Sea Level Inn was open and fairly prominent. And so there were those three basic places for kids to work. And
you just named some good food eating places too.
My gracious. Yeah. Now, I mean, there was a time where I would have put the seafood at the Driftwood up against anybody's anywhere.
Yes.
And I remember before I was old enough to work, they would have a seafood buffet on Saturday nights, Friday or Saturday night at the Driftwood, and people would come from all over the county.
I started to say, because I mean, you're talking about Cedar Island, so
Yeah.
it was good enough, folks, for like us to leave Harker's Island and go to Cedar Island. But if you didn't get there when they opened,
Oh my gracious, it would take forever.
Yeah.
But the Fulcher family employed so many people, and I think of all of my friends worked at one or the other or both in some cases. And I can just always remember people talking about what they should do to the Driftwood, to the motel. And I would always say, well, what do you think? And they're like, well, they need to spend some money and fix up the motel. And I always thought to myself, there's not another soul that's going to spend a night in that motel because it's fixed up. The people that stay there are people that miss the ferry.
Yep.
And people that are going duck hunting in the winter.
Yep.
And
sheer necessity.
Strictly. And I always thought, I was like, to fix up a motel, you're not talking about $10,000. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
And you will not make a single dime more because you do it. But that people love to tell you how you should spend your money. It was such a neat place. Those were such neat places to work.
Mm-hmm. It was like a rite of passage.
Oh my gracious, yeah. I mean,
because we had like the seaside.
Sure.
That was where we've all filtered through. Mila gave me my first job. I begged Mom at 14, get me a worker's permit, please. And and Billy's supermarket,
yeah.
Island Restaurant.
Sure.
Each community had their little places.
Right.
At that time.
And as a kid, having your own money, that was what it was all about.
Yeah.
And once you had that opportunity, other people wanted those jobs.
Yep.
And I just always thought of my friends that would get jobs in Beaufort, like my buddy Tommy Salter from Cedar Island, Big Marble's son. Uh, he got a job at Subway in Beaufort. And I just always thought, man, that's gotta suck to get off work at Subway in Beaufort and have to drive to Cedar Island after you got off work. I mean,
that the time and the gas and
which it was just
wow.
But working down east was such an important part of growing up, and it further ingratiated you into the community. I mean, you became like, I think back to Sundays at the Red and White. So there were a couple of guys that ran haul boats, and then there were probably 6 or 8 shrimp boats that would come in on Sundays and buy their groceries for the week.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so Sundays was such a busy time because those guys would come in and buy, I mean, at that time, $200 or $300 worth of groceries. And, you know, in the early 90s, it went a lot farther than it does today, but you would have to pack those groceries in boxes instead of bags because they would have to take it off to load in the boats. But there again, that was another interesting part of that down east culture where you're watching these guys, some of them with, you know, young kids and things like that and they're buying these groceries on Sunday because they're leaving on Sunday evening. And they won't be back until, you know, Friday morning.
And truthfully, the Red and White was probably open for them to be able to do that.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, that grocery store provided a real service to the community. And it was always amusing to me, you know, the number of people that would complain because, you know, that's what people do. Until it closed, and then, my gracious, did they complain?
Right.
And all I thought, you know, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You complained for so long about the price. Well, the price of groceries aren't determined by the people that own the store. It's determined before they ever get there.
Yeah.
The things that the Fulcher family did, the sacrifices that they made, because, you know, after Jerry Gassel became the director of the ferry division, eventually Miss June Fulcher, Clay Fulcher's wife, she became the general manager of the Driftwood and the Red and White. And I always thought, you could be going on vacation or, you know, doing this, that, and the other, but instead you're over here at the Driftwood, you know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, whatever, and sacrificing time with your family, sacrificing doing something that you probably would have rather be doing, but in earnest, probably to make sure that 10 or 12 kids, young adults, had a job.
And we're on the straight and narrow. We're doing the right thing.
Yeah, not running the roads. I mean, it's the number of hurdles to do what they did then. There are so many more hurdles that they would have to overcome to do it today.
Oh, for sure.
But in the fact that they stayed doing it because they knew if once they stopped, you know, all the things that were grandfathered in and, you know, this, that, and the other. I know there were hard choices for that family to make. And you know, and thankfully now there are families that, you know, I see Chris and Catherine and, you know, Wild Will's Revenge. And it's great to see people who appreciate down east making those sacrifices that generations before them made. Yeah. Because as someone who worked in the restaurant industry for a long time, nobody's getting rich in restaurants unless you own a ton of them. Unless,
Yeah.
you know, to own a small mom and pop restaurant is a tough gig. And you know better than I do because, you know, your family had Captain Henry's forever.
Yes.
And
yeah.
It's so many of those choices are made in business down there because you know that if you don't continue to provide that opportunity, the opportunity is not going to be there.
Right. Yeah. And that's a sad truth and it's hard, but like you mentioned, Captain Henry's, Mom and Dad knew that when they closed that would be it. And the building's sitting there now empty, one of the prettiest buildings down east, you know, and it's just sad to see. So what would you say to the youth down east now? Because we know that things have changed so drastically. We took a whole lot for granted. But what would you tell them now? That's a hard one, but...
That you've got an amazing opportunity. And it's easy to take that for granted. Mm-hmm. The times that I am home and I go to church with my mom and I look around that little church congregation in Atlantic and I see Laura Hill. Miss Laura is such an amazing person and such a well of knowledge and a heart that this room or this county couldn't hold. Don't miss the opportunities to sit down and talk to someone like that. Rita Harris, like I think back to her husband, Roger Harris, Carrie and Bubba's dad, Mr. Roger.
Uh-huh.
You know, he had the net shop and, you know, Mr. Roger was always standing at the back of the Methodist Church in Atlantic when we would come to church on Sundays, and he'd want to give everybody a hug and a handshake. And those unique characters that you overlook because you take for granted that they'll be there forever won't.
Yeah.
You know, a few weeks ago when the Bill 442 was in front of the house in Raleigh, and I would look at the pictures and I would see Jerry Gaskell right there in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
And Bradley Styron.
Yeah.
And, you know, two men who didn't have to be there. Those guys have done their part. Mm-hmm. They had done their part 20 years ago. And for someone like Jerry Gaskell, who I get chill bumps talking about him because he was such an influential part of every level of my childhood. I mean, he was my first interview, you know, when I went to get a job at the Red and White. And then I later interviewed with him to get a job to go to work with the North Carolina Ferry Division. And I worked in his office in Moorhead, and I saw the sacrifices that he made as an individual to grow down east.
Right.
And the ridicule that he would take when he would go to meetings and they would say, well, all you're doing is trying to grow down East Carteret County. And I watched him in a meeting in Ocracoke one day say, well, if I'm doing such a great job of growing down east, how was it that when I took the job as director of the Ferry Division, there were, and I can't remember the number now, but I mean, maybe 8 convenience stores from East Carteret Corner to Cedar Island. Mm-hmm. And in the number of years that he had been the director of the Ferry Division, all of them had closed but about 4.
Oh, wow. Wow.
You know, but the perception and the fight that he had for down east, and then to see that after all the things that he had been through with political infighting and things of that nature, to see that he was right there fighting like hell,
still in the middle,
for what he believed in.
Yeah,
because that's what it's about. Mm-hmm. It's not about what you can gain financially. It's not about what you can gain in terms of power. It's about, at the end of the day, being able to say, I'm part of a Down East family that means more than any number in my bank account or any title in front of my name. It's about believing in something that's bigger than what you are. And I think that's the biggest thing that you can tell somebody that's young and growing up down east now is it's not going to have the authority that my dad was a judge or my dad was a this or my dad was a that. But, but to be able to say that I'm part of something that mattered.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing that you can take from being from down east and growing up down east. And I'm so fortunate to be able to say that because my path didn't necessarily mean that it was going to go that way.
Right. And it is, as I grow older, I realize that the gift or blessing of being from down east comes with a responsibility to preserve the heritage and the traditions and the lore of the area.
Absolutely. I remember Mark Robinson, there's a documentary of the Carolina Brogue.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the Carolina Brogue, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something to the effect of that my dad told me you never wanted to trust a person that left to go to barber college for 6 months and came back without an accent. And over time, I've had conversations with people about accents, and people who take pride in not having an accent always frustrate me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said on multiple occasions that not having an accent only means one thing, that you didn't care enough about where you were to make it a part of who you are.
I love that. And speaking of accents, do you recall, like used to, you could tell when someone would say one sentence, what community they were from? Because we all had an accent, but it was not the same.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that Ellen Goodwin always talked about. Miss Ellen, she would always say that people from Atlantic said the letter V with a W sound.
Mm-hmm.
That instead of vinegar, it was vinegar.
Okay. Uh-huh.
I never caught it. But I do remember hearing people say, people from there say this word this way.
Yeah.
And I remember the communities had different nicknames. People from Stacy were Piney Piners.
Mm-hmm.
And Davis, one community was Onion Eaters. Who are Onion Eaters? That might have been Davis.
Oh, that was Davis.
Yeah.
That was Davis. Yeah.
And Williston was Beantowners.
Yeah.
And
Atlantic was the Purr.
The Purr. And that was just another.
There were terms of endearment.
Possibly. At some point, maybe. It meant something to be a part of a community.
Yeah, it did. And we took pride in our communities.
Oh, my gracious, yes.
For sure. And that's all we really want to see with people who move in, is just learn and become part of us.
Absolutely. And to understand that there was value.
Mm-hmm.
There's value in that community. I think about things that, like growing up in Atlantic, when I was a kid, there were 2 black men that worked at the fish house, Hicks and Red Jack.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I turned 16, one of the first things I learned was if you see one of those guys walking, you pick them up.
You pick them up, yeah.
And you take them where they need to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're an important part of our community.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just think about subtle things like that people took care of each other.
Yeah.
One of my best friends, and to this day, Nick Klein, when we were 15, Nick dove off a boat at the harbor and broke his neck. And so, 33 years now, Nick has been in a wheelchair. And I think about how the community looks after him,
Mm-hmm.
how they make sure that he has what he needs. And, it's a neat thing that even though we could all be a turd at a time or another, he was our turd.
Right.
And so we're going to take care of them. I think about every time there's someone in the community that passes away. I mean, my mom would make cream corn and sweet potato casserole every single time somebody passed away. I mean, she always had a Ziploc bag of the sweet potato casserole topping in the freezer.
Ready to go.
Boom. I mean, and like, I don't think that is the way our generation does things as much.
Right.
I know now if somebody passes away, I mean, you're going to go pick up something from,
Right. I volunteer for fried chicken, and then you call it in.
Right.
And pick it up.
You go to the pig and you pick it up.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's inevitably from one generation to the next, things are going to change. And I think that the strong sense of community that makes up Down East, because it was so strong in the 80s and 90s when I was coming of age down there, it seems more significant. It's more obvious,
right.
In how it's changing,
right?
And that's it's scary for Down East, but it's a lot scarier for the rest of the world because sadly the rest of the world was deteriorating at a much greater pace.
Right, exactly. Well, I have enjoyed our time, and it's flown by. I knew it would. But I would love to have you back sometime.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I would love that.
Okay.
I would love that.
All right, because we still have a lot that we can talk about.
Yeah, and it's so important what you're doing. It's really important to provide some sort of documentation of the importance of what has taken place. Mm-hmm. That you hope that next week or whenever it's released that someone sits down and listens to it and thinks, well, man, I know Della. I need to go find out about when she used to whip them boys at baseball or whatever.
Right.
Or I think he and Corey are about the same age. I need to go see Bump and see, what it was like for this, because they're there and they want you to come talk to them. They want to share with you what they've experienced so you can share it with someone else. But the most important thing is that we've got to keep sharing. We've got to keep sharing because that's what shows that it meant something to us.
Absolutely. And if you're listening and you would love to share your story, or if you know someone's story who you would love to be shared, please contact me, because it's a lot of people turn me down. I reach out and ask, and they're like, well, I have nothing to say, because they don't realize that their story matters.
It does.
And it does. So I would love for anyone to reach out to me. So thank you for that little plug there. Well, thank you, kind sir.
It was a pleasure.
Until next time.
Look forward to it.
Thank you again for joining us to The Landing. This podcast is brought to you by the Core Sound Waterfowl Museum and Heritage Center. I am your host, Stacy Davis Baisden, and today's podcast was produced by April Davidson. Tune in next week as we continue learning, sharing, and remembering together. If you'd like to hear more, check out our previous episodes where you get your podcasts. Until then, stay safe and be kind.